The Sky Heist. The Mystery of D.B. Cooper. November 24th, 1971, the day before Thanksgiving. A man in a dark suit and sunglasses walked into Portland Airport. He bought a one-way ticket to Seattle, paid in cash. No one remembered his face. No one asked his name. 36 passengers boarded Flight 305, unaware that one of them carried a note that would change history. He ordered a drink, smoked a cigarette, and handed the note to a flight attendant. "I have a bomb." Calm, polite, precise. He demanded $200,000, 4 parachutes, and a refueled plane. Hours later, he would vanish through the rear stairs of a Boeing 727 into a storm that would never give him back. The Sky Heist, the mystery of D.B. Cooper. It was November 24th, 1971, the day before Thanksgiving. The flight departed Portland at around 4:35 p.m., just as the evening rain began. Northwest Orient Flight 305, a Boeing 727-100, prepared for its short trip from Portland to Seattle. On board were 36 passengers and 6 crew members. A quiet evening flight that should have been forgotten by morning. But one man made sure it would never be forgotten. He bought his ticket in cash using the name Dan Cooper. Seat 18C. A man in his mid-40s, about 5'10", wearing a dark suit, white shirt, black tie, and sunglasses. He was polite, soft-spoken, and calm, the kind of passenger no one would notice twice. He ordered a bourbon and soda, lit a cigarette, and stared through the window as the plane lifted off from Portland. A few minutes later, he handed a folded note to flight attendant Florence Schaffner. At first, she didn't even look at it, assuming it was a phone number. Then he leaned closer and said quietly, "Miss, you'd better read that note. I have a bomb inside his briefcase were red cylinders and wires, just enough to convince anyone it was real." He spoke calmly, never raising his voice. When senior flight attendant Tina Mucklow joined him, he listed his demands: $200,000 in $20 bills, 4 parachutes, 2 main, 2 reserve, and a fuel truck waiting in Seattle. As the plane continued toward its destination, the crew relayed his message to air traffic control. FBI agents in Seattle began preparing the money, 10,000 bills, each with its serial number carefully recorded. Meanwhile, the man in seat 18C relaxed in silence. He finished his drink, smoked another cigarette, and watched the rain thicken over the clouds below. He seemed to know the flight path, asking about landmarks and the plane's speed. He was confident, methodical, unshaken. At 5:24 p.m., Flight 305 touched down in Seattle. The rain poured harder now, streaking across the windows. The hijacker sat motionless as agents outside delivered his demands. He examined the bag of money, counted a few stacks, and checked each parachute carefully, as though he knew what he was looking for. Then he smiled slightly and said, "Thank you. Let's get back in the air." 21 passengers and 2 flight attendants were released. Only the cockpit crew and Tina Mucklow remained. The engines roared to life once more as the plane lifted off into the storm. No one on board could have known that the polite man in seat 18C, the one reporters would later misname D.B. Cooper instead of Dan, was about to vanish into legend. At 5:24 p.m., Northwest Orient Flight 305 touched down in Seattle. Rain streaked across the windows, turning the runway lights into blurred bands of color. Inside, the man in seat 18C sat perfectly still, his briefcase resting on his knees. His voice, when he used it, measured and calm. On the tarmac, the response moved like a silent machine. $200,000 in $20 bills had been assembled. 10,000 notes, each serial number carefully recorded by the FBI. 4 parachutes were gathered as demanded, 2 main and 2 reserve, exactly as he had requested. A fuel truck waited at the ready. An airline employee brought a canvas bag and the parachutes to the aircraft. When the door opened, the man received them with unwavering composure. He loosened the mouth of the bag, lifted out bundled stacks of 20s, checked the bands, and counted deliberately. He examined the parachutes as if he already knew what to look for: fabric, harness, pins, reserve ties. Nothing missed, nothing rushed. When he finished, he nodded once and spoke just above a whisper. "Thank you. That will do." Most passengers still believed they were facing a routine delay, a quiet inconvenience in a wet November evening. At his instruction, the cabin remained orderly. Then came the release. One by one, 21 passengers stepped out into the rain and walked toward the terminal lights. 2 flight attendants followed with them. What remained aboard were 5 crew members: the pilot, the co-pilot, the flight engineer, and 2 flight attendants, Florence Schaffner and Tina Mucklow, along with the man who had orchestrated the most controlled hijacking anyone had ever seen. He spoke evenly to the cockpit. "We'll go south. Mexico City." The crew calculated and explained the limits of their fuel. There was a brief pause. "Then Reno, Nevada," he said. His instructions continued with the certainty of a checklist. Altitude below 10,000 feet, airspeed at 170 knots, flaps at 15 degrees, landing gear down. He wanted the cabin lights kept low and the window shades drawn. He told the crew to remain in the cockpit, and once airborne, the rear stairs were to be left ready for use. Fuel flowed, paperwork was cleared. The aircraft waited against the rain. In the cabin's rear, the man arranged the cash into a bag and secured it firmly, testing the weight and the tie. He loosened his black tie and rolled his shirt sleeves, not in haste, but with a kind of ritual precision. Every movement said the same thing: control. At 7:40 p.m., Flight 305 lifted from the runway again and climbed into the dark. The Boeing 727 leveled off low and settled into the ordered pace he had dictated, slow, steady, obedient to the storm. Shades were down, lights were dim. The cabin felt smaller than it had before, as if the world had narrowed to a single plan carried out by a single, very quiet man. In the front, the crew watched their instruments and kept to his numbers. Below 10,000 feet, 170 knots, flaps at 15, gear fixed down. In the back, faint footfalls moved from row to row, a whisper of fabric, the soft thump of a bag set against a seat. No raised voice, no panic, only the relentless patience of a plan that had not yet reached its end. The man in the dark suit had taken a routine flight and turned it into a precise operation. He had what he asked for: the money, the parachutes, the airplane, and the night was his to use. Above the wet northwest, Flight 305 obeyed, heading southeast toward Reno, while a legend assembled itself in the dim light behind the rear bulkhead. By the time Flight 305 left Seattle once more, night had already swallowed the sky. The Boeing 727 climbed slowly, staying low just as he ordered, below 10,000 feet, 170 knots, flaps at 15 degrees, landing gear locked down. Outside, rain swept across the fuselage like static, and the engines carried a deep, steady hum through the storm. In the dim rear cabin, D.B. Cooper sat alone. He placed the money beside him, counted the bundles one last time. $200,000 in $20 bills, neatly stacked, each serial number logged by the FBI. Then he slipped them into the canvas bag and tied the cord tightly around his waist. He moved with calm precision, as if following a practiced sequence. He removed his tie, rolled up his sleeves, and reached for one of the 4 parachutes, choosing a civilian sport chute, not one of the military reserves. He adjusted the straps carefully, testing their weight. From the cockpit, the crew heard his voice once more. Maintain 170 knots. Keep it steady, then silence. Tina Mucklow, the only attendant still near the cabin, watched him secure the bag and glanced toward the rear stairs. He asked how to lower them. She hesitated for a moment. "It's okay, miss," he said softly. "I'll take it from here." She turned back toward the cockpit, and that was the last time anyone ever saw him. Moments later, the crew felt a sudden vibration under their feet. Warning lights flashed on the control panel. "The aft stairs are down," the flight engineer said. Pressure dropped sharply. The cabin jolted upward, then steadied again. At exactly 8:13 p.m., a sudden shift registered on the instruments. A quick loss of pressure, then silence. Somewhere between Seattle and Reno, over the dark forests near Ariel and Woodland, Washington, the man known as D.B. Cooper stepped into the storm. The night was brutal. 40 degrees, driving rain, winds over 200 miles per hour. There were no city lights below, only blackness and forest. No landmarks, no sound except the air rushing past. He jumped into that void with 40 pounds of cash strapped to his body and a parachute on his back. Whether he opened it in time or at all, no one would ever know. By the time Flight 305 landed safely in Reno hours later, the man who had ordered it there was gone. No radio call, no radar trace, no body. Just a name drifting somewhere in the cold air behind them. The sky had taken him, and for 50 years, it never gave him back. When D.B. Cooper vanished into the storm, the chase began. Before dawn, helicopters circled the forests of Washington and Oregon. Hundreds of FBI agents, soldiers, and volunteers spread out across the terrain between Ariel and Woodland, searching for a trace of the man who had stepped out of the sky. They found nothing. No parachute, no footprints, no torn clothing, not even a bill from the money he carried. The Northwest air had swallowed him completely. The investigation grew into one of the largest in U.S. history. Inside the Bureau, it carried a code name, NORJAK, short for Northwest Hijacking. Every lead, every rumor, every new Cooper was added to the growing file. Weeks turned into months, months into years. Still no body, no clue, no answer. In 1978, a hunter walking through the woods north of Portland found a small piece of metal lodged in the soil, an instruction placard torn from the staircase of a Boeing 727. It was the first confirmed fragment from Flight 305, proof that something had fallen from the sky. 2 years later, in February 1980, an 8-year-old boy camping with his family on the banks of the Columbia River uncovered 3 small bundles of cash. The rubber bands were brittle, the bills decayed, but the serial numbers matched perfectly. $2,940, Cooper's money. No other trace was ever found. The discovery deepened the mystery. Had the river carried it there? Had Cooper buried it himself? Or had someone else dropped it after finding him? FBI analysts reopened every theory. They studied the tie he had left on his seat and found microscopic particles of titanium, a clue suggesting he might have worked in aerospace or chemical manufacturing, industries close to the sky. Dozens of names filled the Norjack file. Richard Floyd McCoy Jr., a former Green Beret who hijacked another 727 months later using almost the same method. Dwayne Weber, who confessed on his deathbed, "I'm Dan Cooper." Kenneth Christensen, a Northwest Airlines employee with parachute experience. Robert Rackstraw, an ex-Vietnam pilot whose past fit the legend. William Gossett, a veteran who told friends he was the man everyone was looking for. Each one seemed close, and yet every lead ended the same way: no proof. For decades, the search continued. Agents followed tips from all over the country, tracked bills that never appeared, and retested fingerprints and DNA from the tie. Nothing matched. By 2016, the FBI quietly closed the NORJAK investigation. 45 years of work, thousands of pages of evidence, and the man remained a ghost. He had entered the storm and never come out. No body, no parachute, no ending. Only a question still echoing through the Northwest skies. Who was D.B. Cooper? More than 50 years have passed since D.B. Cooper stepped into the night sky. The money, the parachute, the man himself, all vanished. What remained was a legend that refused to fade. Across the decades, hundreds have claimed to be him. Each confession sounded familiar: a quiet man, a veteran, a pilot, a wanderer. But none ever fit completely. And perhaps that was the secret of his story. It was never meant to belong to one man. Over time, investigators kept returning to the same pieces of evidence: the black clip-on tie he left on his seat, the titanium particles that hinted he might have worked in aerospace or chemical engineering, industries close to the sky itself, the 3 bundles of money buried by the Columbia River, the small instruction placard from the plane found years later in the woods. Each clue felt like a whisper, leading nowhere and everywhere at once. Even his name was born from a mistake. He called himself Dan Cooper. But when reporters misheard the details in the chaos that followed, the world met him as D.B. Cooper, a simple error that turned a man into a myth. Books, songs, and films carried that myth forward. From The Pursuit of D.B. Cooper to references in Prison Break, Twin Peaks, and even Loki, the man who vanished became a symbol, not of crime, but of freedom. The idea that someone, somewhere, could simply step out of the system and disappear. By 2016, the FBI finally closed the NORJAK file. After 45 years of searching, they had nothing left to chase. No body, no parachute, no final truth. Just the echo of a story that refused to end. Maybe he died that night, buried deep in the forests of Washington. Maybe he survived, changed his name, and watched the legend grow from afar. Or maybe, as some believe, he never really existed, only an idea, drifting through the decades like smoke. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. They linger in the silence, waiting in the fog between fact and legend. And maybe that's where D.B. Cooper still is, drifting somewhere between the clouds and the stories we tell about him. Because sometimes, the only way to stay alive is to disappear. Some mysteries vanish into the dark. Others learn to live there. He jumped into a storm and was never seen again. No body, no parachute, no ending. For decades, the FBI searched the skies, tracing serial numbers, chasing rumors, but all they ever found were questions. Over time, the man became a symbol of defiance, of mystery, of freedom. And maybe that's why the world still looks up, wondering if somewhere beneath the clouds the legend of D.B. Cooper is still alive. Because some stories never land. They just keep drifting through the storm. The Sky Heist, the mystery of D.B. Cooper. He vanished into a storm, and the world spent 50 years searching for the truth. But sometimes the truth doesn't disappear, it's just ignored. In 2015, a young woman was kidnapped. The police called it a hoax. The press called it the real-life gone girl. What followed was a second nightmare, not the abduction, but the disbelief. Next on True Echoes, American Nightmare. The story of a woman who survived and a system that refused to believe her. Every secret waits to be revealed. Every silence that carries an echo. Every story is waiting to be told. What about yours? What do you think about this case? Share your thoughts in the comments. Every voice matters. Subscribe and step into the echoes of truth.